So this is where the determinants of supply will really have a massive impact. When the price of the commodity is high, the producers and suppliers are willing to sell more commodities. Supply of good also depends on the goals of the organization. When the price of inputs is low, that is, the cost of production is also going to be low. Good morning and welcome to the fifth session in Business Decision Theories in Unit 1, where we are going to speak about the determinants of supply. Now, moving further, going with the supply function, the law of supply states that when the price of a commodity increases, its supply also increases. That's what we were trying to see in the previous sessions. So, moment you see that a product is in demand, the supply is needed, automatically the supply will tend to increase because that's where the revenue cycle begins altogether. Market always pushes the product what the consumer wants, and the supply chain, the manufacturing units also will look for this clue and try to push that supply to the maximum level possible. So that's why I say that the law of supply always says that the price of commodity increases. So that's where the price will increases when the supply also increases. Similarly, when the price of commodity decreases, its supply also decreases. Quite a straightforward relation. Moment that price of the commodity starts coming down, there's no much demand for it, the prices started coming down, the supply will also be down. So that's why you would see that in the business of commodities, what is more important is that, are you a part of the market trend altogether? You're not a part of the market trend, your product is not in action right now, automatically the supply will also be forgotten. So automatically people will say that, yes, I'm not interested in this product. Market will also not supply that product. They will just leave it. They'll feel that, okay, this is not what we are looking into, and they will just go away from it. Hence, this is a direct relationship between price and supply of commodity. Now, let me just give you an example of blackberries and PDAs, which were dominating the market for a very, very long time. Once upon a time, BlackBerry was considered to be the apex in terms of mobile security, in terms of holding a mobile phone in hand. It was a prestigious factor altogether with a dial-in keypads and everything. But then after some time, when BlackBerry started losing market because it was not functionally moving up, it was not really coming up to the expectations of the consumers, and Android started overtaking the market completely, BlackBerry lost its supply chain completely. People also started, getting on to the level where they started saying that, okay, BlackBerry is not going to come anymore. That's purely because of the factor that the trend analysis that comes into picture. So when you are with it, when you are in sync with that, automatically you will see that it is working, it is coming in tandem. But if the product price starts coming down, the demand starts coming down, nobody is interested, the supply will also start coming down. Now, moving further, the supply function. Now, what is the supply function all about? How is the supply function defined? It explains the relationship between the supply of a commodity and the factors determining its supply. So it's very, very interesting for us to see it. How does it come into picture? We can better represent the supply function in the following equation. That is, function of P of X, PIT, W and GP. What are all this terminology? Sx stands for supply of commodity X. Px stands for price of the commodity. Pi stands for price of the inputs. T stands for technology. W stands for weather conditions. Now, when I use the word weather condition, that means the environmental conditions. And GP stands for government policy. Now, why are so many things coming in for a supply function? When we spoke about demand, if you remember, there was just one simple thing. So when I say that quantity demanded QD is equal to function of P, that's all. It was just a plain straight equation, one simple factor. But then when I talk about supply, so many factors are coming into picture. So is that supply so complicated for all of us to understand? The answer is yes. Why? Because supply is not a one-stop function. There are so many people who are internally involved with supply. They just won't give up on supply so easily. There are so many factors that come with it. Now, for example, the first thing is the price of the commodity. What is the price? So if you go to the market today and say that you want to buy a superior Android phone. Now let's say that it might be a OnePlus 9, or you want to go for a Samsung high-end model phone which is really superb in nature like an S20, or probably you want to go for a Note 10 Plus, something of that nature. So automatically the first thing is the price of the commodity. What is the price are we talking about? So that price will have an impact on the supply. If the price is acceptable, automatically supply starts pulling up. Now, price of the input. Now, the input factors, the inventory factors needed to manufacture that particular item or that particular product is very expensive. It is not found, or it is very, something which is very difficult to get it, then automatically supply chain will also show a factor. So the price of the inputs will matter to the supply to a very great extent. Next thing, technology. What kind of technology are we speaking about? The moment you see an ad for an Apple iPad Pro, automatically what comes to your mind is that, wow, this is superb. This has got all the technology features that is inbuilt. You just have to swipe left and right and every technology works for you. But then for Apple to bring in a superior technology-oriented product to the market, there is a cost factor that is involved. So that cost factor will be embedded back to the product. Are the consumers ready to pay that price? So technology does not come free, it comes with a cost. So what is the technology that we are trying to increase? Now when Kia came up with the Sonet, or when you start looking at MG Hector trying to come up with the bigger versions like the MG Gloster with high-end technologies put in together, or when you start looking at the Hyundai Alcazar coming up with high-end technologies all together, now that is a cost factor which they are including. It is not just about the advertisement altogether, it's about a cost. Because every technology that is embedded into a Jaguar or a Hyundai or an MG or a Kia, all of them have some cost factor. That cost has to be absorbed by the product, which has to be taken to the consumers, and they have to absorb the price. So definitely supply is going to be a challenging thing to talk about, followed by the weather conditions. When I talk about the environmental conditions altogether, in what situation, in what condition are we manufacturing? What is the environment talking to us? What is it telling us? Is this the right time to get into production? Is this the right manufacturing setup altogether? Is the market favoring my product to come up? If the answer is yes, then fantastically enough, the supply will start going up. If the market is not giving me the signals of producing more, then automatically I might not have my supply in place, followed by the government policy. When you look into India, today the government policy is more about on a revival standard. So definitely they are in an urge, they are giving the push saying that yes, you manufacture more, you produce more so that we will revive back. But if the government policy is negative in nature, going back to countries like North Korea where you still talk about dictatorship emerging, then the government policy becomes a negative stand altogether for the supply. At that point of time, I would not like to have my supply in place. I would say that the supply is not working. So what is happening altogether is that there is a need, there's a push factor that is coming into picture. That push is mandatory. So with all these things coming into picture, the supply will definitely take a new stand. followed by the determinants of supply. So when I look into the determinants of supply, all these factors as we have discussed now, the natural factors, the number of firms, the firm goals, and the technology, the government policies, expectations, all these things matter a lot, and that's how you would see the supply happening. Now, I would also like to throw some light here in terms of the firm goals and expectation, especially in terms of the firms in coming up on the supply chain. What has happened of late is that every firm has started setting its own goal. They want to be a part of the competition, but definitely stand out of the competition. Now, that's exactly, a picture where I'm trying to contradict in terms of telling you how it is happening. I am a part of a mainstream, no doubt about it. Let me say that I'm like a company called Raymond's, which is into the manufacture of fine fabric. But Raymond wants to stand out of the competition by being a leader in the supply of the best garments that are available, the best fine quality garments altogether. Now, Raymond's doesn't want to accept competition just like any other firms, because Raymond has experienced the supply curve to the maximum level possible. It has been there in the market for more than 80 years now. 80, 90 years plus institution. It's almost going to touch about 100 years altogether in a couple of years coming down. Now, what does Raymond wants to do here is that they want to set a goal for the firm, and the firm has to just keep moving further. They don't want to get affected by any other norms or anything. They just want to keep their production capacity, their expertise in garment manufacturing to the best level possible. They don't want to get deterred by all the activities that is happening. Now, even let's look at the example of Asian Paints. Asian Paints on one side, which is completely dependent on the real estate sector, though the real estate sector is not doing so well of late, but still Asian Paints have always tried to retain their position in the market by being a leader in the paint solution business. So what they want to do is that they have set a goal internally, and the firm wants to supply to the market invariably what is happening. So the firm goals are also a very intricate part of the supply chain. They don't want to give up on that. They have set their mind and they are moving further. They are trying to come up with variations. Today there was a very good news that came in the market saying that Maruti has come with a new version for the XL6. They're now coming up with a diesel variant. TVS has recently come up with an electric scooter. So what is happening is that each of the company are setting their own trends. They are setting their own goals, and the production is continuing in different variations and capacity. They don't want to give up on that. So that is where you would see that though number of firms are there, there is a competition, a stiff competition in the market. Pricing is being a challenge, but still companies don't want to give up. They want to retain the supply chain. They want to retain the supply market. They want to create a demand going further with new products coming up in their zone. So this is where the determinants of supply will really have a massive impact. Now, the price of the commodity, it is the main and most important determinant of demand. When the price of the commodity is high, the producers and suppliers are willing to sell more commodities. This is what we have been talking about right from the beginning. Price is everything in the market. Price sets a tone to the market altogether. Now, there are exceptional products, let's not worry about it, but then let us talk about price as a very, very simple factor which has been trying to set a standard altogether. Whenever you go to a market and you start talking about price to people, they have a mixed reactions about it, because everybody is not able to accept price as it is given, and people have their own agitations altogether. They think about it. They think 100 times whether this price will work, this price is good, this price is bad, is it overrated, is it underrated, why should I buy the price, what will happen to me? All those factors start coming into picture. They don't want to give up on things at all, because they believe that price is something that is very, very close to them. So what happens in the long run is that the suppliers take price as the biggest clue in terms of hitting the market. The moment they get a pulse saying that people are okay with this price is what it is going up altogether, then the suppliers also take the advantage, they sell more to make more money. So especially when you look into the essential commodities segment altogether, with the rising inflation that's happening in our country, where all the necessary items and goods, the prices are going up to the next level. But still, the suppliers feel that consumers are ready to absorb the price and they are supplying that goods. So price becomes a very essential part which determines the mainstay of the economy. And now, the supply of commodity increases. When the price goes down, automatically the supply will also go down, because that is not favoring the producers. So supply is something which is a direct replicant of the price, like the demand. But then what happens here is that it's a movement of the commodity and trend of the market starts coming into picture. Now, when people look for products which are cheaper in price, but that particular product might not be available because I'm not making my margins. When I say the manufacturers are not making a margin out of it. So what trends into the market is the market moving comes in terms of the price movement. So the price movement tells whether the supply of that good will exist or not. Followed by the firm goals, as I was talking about. Why? Because the supply of good also depends on the goals of the organization. Now, the goals of the organizations are always very big, and that requires a lot of thinking altogether. Recently, there was a very beautiful statement made by the chairman of Hindustan Unilever Limited, when he was trying to talk about the revival of the Indian economy, and he was trying to say that Indian economy would revive really very fast by the time we reach December onwards. What he was trying to say here is that he was trying to talk about the profit maximization, the sales, employment generation, and other factors that is going to aid in terms of the economy, relevation moving up altogether. Why this is important? For a firm, it tries to seek a larger goal. It tries to seek a vision which is quite lengthy, which is quite long in nature. The firm's objective is not to remain short-term focused, but to remain long-term focused. So what the firm will think about with the profit maximization is that it will also think about introducing new products, staying longer in the market, and trying to bring in more and more features, more and more products altogether, so that it can survive for a longer time. So that's where you would be able to see that when the profits are low, when they start looking into this factor, when profits are coming down, they try to switch to new products where they can create an impulsive demand, and they can again start scaling up the order altogether. It's not going to be an easy ball game altogether, but then the consumers, the companies are directly related, where they go back, where they try to understand, and they start moving up the ladder in a different format, in a different line altogether. Moving up, when I talk about the prices of inputs or factors, this is very, very important. Why? Because India is a country which has got a great impact in terms of land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. Let me just talk about this land, labor, and capital for a while, because it has a direct impact as we are talking about it. When we talk about this land, labor, capital factor, it is quite interesting. Why? Because India, being such a diversified country with so much of culture, so much of people and skill set available, but still everywhere you don't get the land, you don't get the labor or the capital at the right price. So you have to struggle for it. There are few cities in India where you get a right mix of land, labor, and capital. There are few cities in India where you don't get this at all. So setting up a manufacturing base and trying to manufacture at the best price and giving it to the country at the best level possible is not going to be easy at all. It's going to be a very big challenge. It's going to be a very big progress altogether. So what is going to happen here is that when the price of inputs is low, that is, the cost of production is also going to be low. So automatically, what we are going to see here, when you are getting an easy labor, easy land and the inputs, then automatically the price is also going to come down, and you would see that there is going to be a huge amount of impact. There's going to be a huge amount of growth process altogether. Now, the other thing that I'm going to see here is that the firms tend to supply more goods in the market and vice versa. This is very, very important for all of us. Why? Because when you start understanding this factor very clearly, you will start seeing that the firms are trying to supply more goods. The firms are trying to come up to the market because they are now flooded with the land, labor and capital process. Now let's go back to the the Silicon Valley of India, Bangalore and Hyderabad, Chennai, Gurgaon, all these places. When they suddenly started moving up in the real estate market, getting up to the higher prices, that was purely because the growth of the software companies and the availability of employment there. As these cities started emerging up to be the next destination for growth, that automatically you were able to see that the supply of labor also started going up very well, and that's why most of the companies established their base there, and automatically you saw that the development of the cities went up to the next level. So the price of input factors will definitely have a direct impact on the supply chain. Followed by the technology. We have spoken about the technology in a lot of line and length, where we have gone ahead and explained in terms of how technology really impacts. But then technology's first and foremost thing which I would like to talk about is the saving factor on the input, and also the reduction of cost on the production. This is one important thing that you have to think about. Way back when Toyota started up its plant in India, especially in B.B.A in Bangalore, they were the first company who ever came up with the robotics in terms of manufacturing, in terms of running up the entire system. So they were able to go proudly and say that the manufacturing time for a Toyota Collis at that point of time was very much less when compared to that of manufacturing any other car in India. Why was it possible? Is that because they had adapted to technology very well, and they knew that they could also bring down a lot of cost in terms of labor. Now, that was one of the things that what Toyota wanted to go and tell to all the manufacturing firms, especially when they were using the most advanced technology in terms of logistics, of getting the inventory only when it is required and maintaining the lowest inventory cost in terms of manufacturing. All these signals prove to the manufacturing companies, the other companies, saying that yes, technology is going to be a cutting edge in terms of your supply chain. So today, all the companies across the globe, across the country, are trying to adapt themselves to that kind of a mode which will actually bring down their costs. We are probably trying to go on to a zone where we want the machines to overtake the human. So that is where you will start seeing that technology is having a direct impact in terms of the business. Followed by the government policy, the taxation policies that we are seeing, the subsidies that are being given, that all also have a great impact in terms of the supply. So more the supply, more the subsidies, more the factors that are given by the government, the tax reductions and all the kind of benefits that are being provided by the government will definitely help us to produce more goods, and it will also try to give a moral boosting. So when the government gives various subsidies and gives financial aids, definitely the supply chain is also going to move up, and that will have a positive impact altogether. Followed by the expectations. As I always said, that market comes up with a great expectation. So what happens here is that when you are able to supply, the price shall increase in future. They hoard the goods automatically. People want to hold it back and they sell it at a higher price. As a typical example is the onion business that we are talking about. Always when you see that onion suddenly shoots up to a very high price, and after some time they just let open the supply, the prices just come down crashing altogether. That's exactly where the market expectation plays to a very great reason. followed by the prices of other commodities. When you are talking about the prices of other commodities, you also need to understand this factor. The more you are having alternatives, the more you are having substitutes altogether, the result in terms of price hike is also there. So the price of complementary good increases, their supply also increases. This results in the increase in supply of the commodity or vice versa. So one goes down, the other will also go down, and then when one goes up, the other will also start moving up. So complementary goods keep moving with their partners in terms of the price hike or the price decrease. Now, the other thing is the number of firms. If you just start looking into the graph, now normally when you do a data interpretation and you see that as the number of companies starts moving up over a period of time, automatically you would start seeing that the supply of goods also increases, and as the number of firms come down, there would also be a decrease. So number of firms increasing in a particular sector definitely sounds a signal saying that yes, there is going to be an increase in terms of production. That's a very, very important factor that we have to set in our minds, because more the number of firms, more is going to be the output. And the natural factors like weather conditions, or when you see a disaster like a drought, or when you see a conditions like which is affected by landslide or any kind of things, will also have a impact in terms of production, which is quite but known. So that is why we always look for safer zones of production, which is completely safe, which is completely neutral to all the kind of conditions. There the production starts going up, and as and when the land is subjected to all kind of unfavorable conditions, the supply will automatically get impacted. With this, I come to the end of today's session. And I hope and believe that all the information supplied here in terms would be of a great resource and help to you. In the upcoming sessions, we shall be seeing more about the business decision theories in terms of different factors and forms. But until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.